Welcome to Reno BL Story, sir. Please hit subscribe. Thank you very much. Let the story begin. Chapter 1. The emergency room that destroyed their secret. Ethan Hale had learned how to survive by becoming invisible. Invisible neighbors did not ask questions. Invisible omegas did not attract dangerous alphas. Invisible single parents could move from one cheap apartment to another without anyone remembering their names. For 6 long years, Ethan had built his entire life around that rule. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Never let Damien Cross find them. The small apartment above the pharmacy smelled faintly of medicine, laundry detergent, and the cinnamon pancakes Noah loved every Saturday morning. It was not much, but Ethan had fought for every inch of that fragile little life. He worked double shifts filling prescriptions during the day and stocking shelves at night while Noah slept in the back office with a blanket wrapped around his tiny body. Exhaustion had become part of Ethan's bones years ago, but none of it mattered whenever Noah smiled at him. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Noah had begged for grilled cheese sandwiches after school, then fallen asleep on the couch halfway through an old superhero movie. Ethan remembered smiling softly as he carried his son to bed. Noah's dark curls brushed against his chin, and for one peaceful second, Ethan almost believed they were safe. Then Noah stopped breathing normally. Ethan froze beside the bed. Noah's small body suddenly curled inward as painful shivers ran through him. His skin had turned frighteningly pale beneath the warm bedroom light. "Noah!" Ethan whispered urgently as panic flooded his chest. Noah's eyelids fluttered weakly. "Daddy! My chest hurts." Ethan's blood went cold. Within minutes, he was speeding through downtown Seattle with trembling hands locked around the steering wheel. Rain hammered against the windshield while Noah struggled to breathe in the back seat. The clock on the dashboard read nearly midnight when Ethan pulled into St. Gabriel Medical Center. Bright white emergency room lights reflected across wet pavement as nurses rushed toward Noah with a wheelchair. Ethan followed close behind, his entire body shaking. "Please help him," Ethan begged. "He has never collapsed like this before." The nurses moved quickly. Questions blurred together. Allergies, family history, prior conditions. Ethan answered automatically while Noah was connected to monitors inside a pediatric trauma room. Then the alarms began. A sharp sound cut through the room as one of the nurses stared down at Noah's blood work with confusion. "Doctor," she said carefully. The child's genetic markers triggered an emergency registry alert. Ethan felt the floor disappear beneath him. No. His stomach twisted violently as another doctor entered the room carrying a tablet. "This blood profile belongs to an extremely rare alpha lineage," the older physician explained quietly. "There is an immediate family match registered in our national genetic emergency system." Ethan could barely breathe. 6 years of hiding. 6 years of running. Destroyed in less than 20 minutes. "What match?" Ethan whispered. The doctor looked down at the screen. His expression shifted immediately with recognition. Even hospital staff knew that name. Everyone in Seattle knew that name. "Damien Cross," the doctor answered carefully. "Chief Executive Officer of Cross Biotech Industries." Ethan staggered backward. His vision blurred. Somewhere outside the trauma room, expensive dress shoes crossed polished hospital floors with slow, controlled steps. Damien Cross had arrived at St. Gabriel Medical Center less than 10 minutes earlier for a private donation meeting with the hospital board. He had no idea his entire world was about to change. Then Noah's weak voice broke through the chaos. "Daddy!" Ethan turned instantly toward the bed as tears filled his eyes. Noah looked so small beneath the white hospital blankets, so vulnerable. And for the first time in 6 years, Ethan realized the terrible truth. He could run from Damien Cross, but he could never outrun fate. Damien Cross had spent 6 years turning Seattle upside down searching for a ghost. Every private investigator he hired eventually failed. Every trail ended the same way. Empty apartments, closed bank accounts, fake names. Security footage of Ethan disappearing minutes before Damien arrived. At first, Damien had believed it was anger. Ethan had always been emotional, sensitive in ways Damien himself never fully understood. Back then, Damien thought Ethan only needed time alone after their brutal final argument. But when weeks became months, and months became years, something inside Damien slowly began breaking apart. He searched anyway. He searched through every city Ethan had ever mentioned wanting to visit. Portland, Denver, Chicago, tiny towns hidden beneath mountains where no one asked questions. He even bought a chain of pharmaceutical companies after discovering Ethan once applied for work under a false identity. Nothing. Ethan vanished so completely that sometimes Damien wondered if he had imagined the entire relationship. Yet no matter how hard he tried to bury the memory, he could never forget Ethan's scent. Warm rain and cedarwood. Soft. Addictive. Home. Tonight, Damien stood near the private hospital elevator while board members discussed pediatric funding numbers around him. Expensive watches flashed beneath bright conference lighting while polished executives spoke about donation percentages and expansion projects. Damien barely listened. His attention drifted toward the emergency room entrance across the lobby. Something felt wrong. A strange unease had settled beneath his skin the moment he entered St. Gabriel Medical Center. Then his assistant's phone buzzed sharply beside him. "Sir," the beta whispered carefully. "There was an emergency genetic registry activation 10 minutes ago." Damien's expression hardened instantly. "Whose registry?" The assistant hesitated. "Yours." Silence swallowed the hallway. Damien slowly turned toward him. "Explain." "A child was admitted into the pediatric emergency room with genetic markers connected to your family bloodline." Damien felt his pulse stop completely. That was impossible. The Cross family registry only activated under direct hereditary matches. No false positives existed within the system. It had been designed specifically for rare alpha genetic disorders after Damien's younger cousin nearly died during childhood. "Age?" Damien asked quietly. "Approximately 6 years old." 6 years. The number hit Damien like a physical blow. His entire body went still as memories crashed violently through him. Ethan disappearing overnight. The unanswered calls. The abandoned apartment. The investigator in Portland who once claimed Ethan looked pregnant in old surveillance footage before the lead vanished completely. Damien suddenly could not breathe properly. "Where is the child?" The assistant pointed toward the pediatric wing. Damien moved immediately. Nurses stepped aside instinctively as he crossed the hospital floor. Tall, controlled, dangerous in the quiet way powerful alphas often were. Yet beneath Damien's calm expression, panic clawed viciously through him. He did not know what terrified him more, the possibility that the child was his, or the possibility that Ethan had hidden their son from him for 6 years. Inside the trauma room, Ethan was desperately trying to calm Noah, while another doctor adjusted medication levels. Noah looked exhausted beneath the blankets, his small face pale against the white hospital pillow. Ethan brushed trembling fingers through his son's dark curls. "You are okay," he whispered softly. "Daddy is right here." Then the room suddenly changed. Every Omega instinct Ethan possessed screamed before he even looked up. A familiar scent filled the hallway outside. Cold winter air. Sandalwood. Steel. Damien. Ethan's entire body locked in terror. Footsteps stopped directly outside the partially open trauma room door. Noah stirred weakly beneath the blankets and turned toward the hallway. His silver-gray eyes widened with sleepy confusion. "Daddy?" Noah whispered softly. "Someone is here." Ethan looked up at the doorway just as Damien Cross stepped into the room for the first time in 6 years. The world seemed to stop breathing with him. Damien stared directly at Noah, then at Ethan, and suddenly every missing piece of the last 6 years crashed violently into place. Ethan forgot how to breathe. Damien stood motionless near the doorway, his dark gray suit still perfectly pressed despite the late hour, but his expression had completely shattered. For one terrible second, nobody spoke. The only sound inside the trauma room came from the steady rhythm of Noah's heart monitor. Damien's eyes remained locked on the little boy in the hospital bed. Silver-gray eyes, dark curls. Even the shape of Noah's face looked painfully familiar. Ethan saw the exact moment realization began destroying Damien from the inside out. "Ethan," Damien finally whispered. His voice sounded rougher than Ethan remembered, less controlled. "You disappeared." Ethan's protective instincts surged instantly. He stepped closer to Noah's bed without even thinking about it, placing himself between Damien and their son. "You should leave," Ethan said quietly. Damien stared at him in disbelief. "Leave?" he repeated. "After 6 years?" Noah looked between them with sleepy confusion. His small fingers tightened around the hospital blanket. "Daddy," he whispered carefully. "Who is he?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out, because what could he possibly say? That the powerful Alpha standing in front of them was the man Ethan once loved enough to destroy his own life for? That Noah had inherited Damien's eyes, scent profile, and rare blood condition? That Ethan had spent 6 years terrified this exact moment would happen? Damien slowly stepped closer to the hospital bed. Every movement remained careful, almost restrained, as if he feared Noah might disappear if he moved too quickly. Then Noah tilted his head slightly. His brows pulled together in confusion. "You smell familiar," Noah murmured softly. Ethan's stomach dropped instantly. Alpha children often possessed stronger instinctual recognition than adults, especially children connected through direct bloodline pheromones. Damien froze completely. The air inside the room suddenly felt heavier. Noah looked directly at Damien with innocent curiosity. "Mister," he said quietly, "why do you smell like me?" Silence exploded across the room. Ethan felt genuine panic rise through his chest for the first time that night. Damien's expression changed instantly. Shock, hope, fear, rage. Every emotion collided violently behind his eyes. "Ethan," Damien said carefully, "tell me the truth." Ethan grabbed Noah's medical bag from the nearby chair. "We are leaving. The child is not stable enough for discharge." One of the nurses interrupted immediately. "His oxygen levels are still fluctuating." Ethan ignored her. Fear had already taken control. He could not stay here, not with Damien this close, not after the registry alert. If Damien discovered the full truth, everything Ethan built would collapse overnight. Damien stepped forward suddenly, blocking the doorway before Ethan could reach it. Not aggressively, not threateningly, but with quiet alpha authority that instantly shifted the atmosphere around them. "Do not run again," Damien said softly. Ethan's pulse hammered violently. "Move. Is he mine?" Damien asked. Ethan looked away immediately, and that alone became an answer. Damien inhaled sharply as realization finally settled into his bones. 6 years. 6 birthdays missed. 6 years without knowing his son existed. Noah suddenly winced in pain beneath the blankets. The monitor beside him beeped faster as his breathing became uneven again. Ethan rushed back toward the bed instantly. "Noah." The child looked frightened now. "Daddy, I feel weird." A doctor hurried back into the room carrying fresh lab results. His expression looked far more serious this time. "We have a problem," he said carefully. "The child's reaction is getting worse. His body is rejecting the current medication." Ethan felt cold panic grip his chest again. "What does that mean?" The doctor looked toward Damien. "It means we need an immediate biological family match for emergency treatment compatibility testing." Damien did not hesitate even for a second. "Take my blood," he said immediately. Ethan looked up in horror, because deep down he already knew what the test would reveal. Chapter 2. The son he never knew. The laboratory hallway outside the pediatric unit smelled sharply of antiseptic and cold air conditioning. Ethan sat beside Noah's hospital bed with his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Across the room, Damien stood near the windows while a nurse prepared the emergency compatibility testing kit. Neither of them had spoken in almost 10 minutes. The silence between them felt unbearable. Noah looked exhausted now. Dark lashes rested against his pale cheeks while the monitor above his bed continued its steady rhythm. Every few minutes, The child shifted uncomfortably beneath the blankets as another wave of pain moved through him. Ethan brushed trembling fingers through Noah's curls. "You are okay," he whispered softly. "Daddy is not going anywhere." But Ethan no longer knew if that promise was true. Damien finally broke the silence. "How long did you know?" Ethan refused to look at him. "Since the beginning." Damien inhaled slowly, visibly struggling to remain calm. "And you never told me." Ethan laughed bitterly beneath his breath. "You think it was that simple?" Damien stepped closer. "Then explain it to me, Ethan. Because right now all I know is that my son almost died before I even learned his name." Ethan flinched hard at the words "my son." Hearing Damien say it out loud made everything feel terrifyingly real. Before Ethan could answer, the door opened again. The doctor returned carrying several sealed reports. His expression immediately told Ethan the results were already finished. "Mr. Cross," the doctor began carefully, "your compatibility match with the child is exceptionally high." Ethan closed his eyes. Damien did not move. "How high?" Damien asked quietly. The doctor hesitated for only a second. 99.98% probability of direct biological paternity. The entire room went silent. Ethan felt his chest tighten painfully as the truth finally became official. No more hiding behind fake names. No more pretending Noah belonged to nobody. Damien stared at the report in complete silence. Then his gaze slowly lifted toward the child sleeping in the hospital bed. Something inside Damien visibly shattered. Ethan had seen Damien angry before, cold before, ruthless before, but never this devastated. Damien moved toward Noah carefully, as if afraid the moment itself might disappear. He stopped beside the bed and stared down at the little boy sleeping beneath the white blankets. Noah's small hand rested near the edge of the mattress. After a long hesitation, Damien slowly reached forward and touched the child's fingers. The reaction was immediate. Noah instinctively curled his hand around Damien's larger one without even waking up. The entire room froze. Even the nurse quietly looked away, suddenly emotional. Damien's expression completely broke apart. Ethan felt tears sting his own eyes despite himself. Because no matter how hard he tried to deny it, the bond between them was real. Damien swallowed hard before speaking again. 6 years, he whispered. "I missed 6 years." Ethan finally stood from the chair. Exhaustion and fear crashed together inside him until he could barely breathe anymore. "I did not have a choice." Damien looked up sharply. "You always had a choice." "No," Ethan answered immediately, his voice shaking. "Your family made sure I did not." Damien went completely still. Ethan instantly regretted saying it. But it was too late now. Damien stared at him carefully. "What does that mean?" Ethan looked away toward the rain outside the hospital windows. Old memories rose violently to the surface. Black cars parked outside his apartment 6 years ago. Threatening phone calls in the middle of the night. A deep voice warning him that an Omega carrying a cross heir could become a dangerous liability. Ethan remembered packing one suitcase while crying silently over a positive pregnancy test. "After I disappeared," Ethan said quietly, "someone from your family found me." Damien's expression darkened immediately. "Who?" Ethan shook his head. "It does not matter anymore." But the dangerous silence that followed told Ethan one terrifying truth. To Damien Cross, it mattered very much. Damien did not speak again until sunrise began bleeding pale gray light through the hospital windows. Noah had finally stabilized after receiving the emergency treatment, but the doctors still wanted him under observation for another 24 hours. Ethan sat beside the hospital bed with exhaustion carved deeply into his face while Damien stood near the coffee machine across the room, silent and unreadable. The distance between them felt enormous despite the small space. Noah stirred softly beneath the blankets. His silver-gray eyes blinked open slowly before settling on Damien. "You are still here," the child whispered sleepily. Damien immediately crossed the room. "Yeah," he answered quietly. "I am." Noah studied him carefully with the strange honesty children always carried. "Most people leave hospitals fast. Damien looked momentarily caught off guard by the comment. Then something softer appeared in his expression. I am not leaving. Ethan looked away instantly because hearing Damien say those words hurt more than he expected. 6 years ago, Ethan would have believed him completely. Noah relaxed slightly against the pillows. Daddy stayed too, he mumbled proudly before drifting back asleep. Silence settled over the room again. Damien remained beside the bed for several seconds before finally turning toward Ethan. Tell me everything. Ethan's chest tightened immediately. Damien. No lies this time. His voice remained calm, but the pain underneath it felt sharp enough to cut through steel. Ethan stared down at his trembling hands. For years he had rehearsed what he would say if this moment ever came. But now that Damien stood here looking at him with heartbreak written across his face, Ethan realized none of his prepared excuses sounded strong enough anymore. 3 weeks after I left Seattle, Ethan said quietly, a black car followed me home from work. Damien's expression hardened instantly. Who? I never learned their names. Ethan swallowed hard. But they knew everything about me. About the pregnancy. Damien went completely still. Ethan forced himself to continue. One of them told me that carrying a cross heir made me dangerous. They said your family would never allow an Omega like me to raise your child publicly. Memories flooded back with terrifying clarity. Rain hitting the sidewalk outside his apartment building. A stranger calmly handing him an envelope full of cash while another warned him that accidents happened every day in cities like Seattle. Ethan remembered vomiting in the bathroom afterward while holding one shaking hand over his stomach. Why did you not call me? Damien asked quietly. Ethan finally looked at him. Because they knew things only someone close to you could know. Damien's jaw tightened violently. Ethan. They knew where I worked. They knew about our apartment. They even knew the night you stayed with me after your company gala. Damien looked genuinely horrified now. Ethan's voice cracked softly. I thought if I told you, your family would take Noah away before he was even born. Damien turned away sharply, one hand dragging through his dark hair. Fury radiated through the room so heavily even the air felt tense. Ethan had seen Damien angry during business interviews before, but this felt completely different. Personal. Dangerous. My father, Damien said quietly. This sounds like my father. Ethan closed his eyes because deep down he already suspected the same thing. Damien paced toward the hospital windows, breathing hard as years of missing pieces finally connected inside his head. The vanished investigators. The blocked reports. The financial records that disappeared every time he got close to finding Ethan. Someone had been sabotaging the search from the beginning. Someone powerful enough to control entire systems. Damien slowly turned back toward Noah sleeping peacefully beneath the blankets. Then he looked at Ethan again. Nobody is touching either of you ever again, he said quietly. And for the first time that night, Ethan realized Damien was no longer asking for the truth. He was preparing for war. Noah woke fully just after noon. Sunlight spilled softly across the hospital blankets while cartoons played quietly on the mounted television near the corner of the room. For the first time since arriving at St. Gabriel Medical Center, the child no longer looked dangerously pale. Ethan sat beside the bed peeling an orange into careful little slices while Damien remained near the window answering tense phone calls from his security team. Something had changed overnight. Ethan could feel it in the air around Damien. The calm billionaire image was gone now. What remained was pure alpha instinct. Protective. Focused. Dangerous. Noah watched Damien curiously while chewing small bites of orange. Daddy, he whispered quietly. Why does he keep staring at me? Ethan nearly choked. Across the room, Damien looked up immediately. Noah pointed directly at him with complete innocence. Every time I look over there, he is already watching. Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but Damien surprised him first. Because I missed a lot of years, Damien said softly. Noah tilted his head. How many? Damien's expression tightened painfully. Too many. The room became quiet again. Noah seemed to think deeply about that answer before slowly setting down another orange slice. Are you really my dad? Ethan froze completely. Damien looked toward him instinctively, almost asking permission without words. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. Hiding the truth no longer mattered now. Noah deserved honesty. Ethan finally nodded slowly. Yes, he whispered. Noah blinked several times. Then he looked back toward Damien again with open curiosity instead of fear. Okay, he said simply. Damien visibly stopped breathing for a second. Ethan almost laughed through the emotional ache crushing his chest. Children accepted life-changing truths in ways adults never could. Noah shifted slightly against the pillows. You look like me. Damien stepped closer carefully. I think you got the better deal. Noah grinned weakly for the first time since entering the hospital. The expression hit Damien like a bullet. Ethan saw it happen in real time. The exact moment Damien completely fell in love with his son. Noah suddenly winced again, pressing one small hand against his chest. Damien moved instantly toward the bed before Ethan even reacted. What hurts? He asked quietly. Noah looked startled by the immediate concern. Just tired. Damien adjusted the blankets gently around him with surprising care. Ethan stared openly now because this version of Damien felt unfamiliar. Softer, warmer, human in ways Ethan had almost forgotten existed. Noah looked down at Damien's hand resting beside the blanket. Then, slowly, the child placed his own smaller hand over it. The contact seemed instinctive, natural. Damien's entire expression broke apart again. Noah frowned slightly while studying him. Why do you look sad? Damien swallowed hard before answering. Because I should have found you sooner. Noah considered that carefully. Then he asked the one question Ethan feared most. If you were looking for us? Noah whispered softly. Why didn't you come? Silence crushed the room instantly. Damien looked completely shattered. Ethan felt tears burn painfully behind his eyes because there was no good answer to that question. Damien slowly sat beside the hospital bed for the first time. His voice dropped lower, rougher. I tried, he admitted quietly. I searched everywhere. Noah studied him for several long seconds before nodding softly. Children understood honesty better than perfection. But before anyone could speak again, Damien's phone vibrated sharply inside his jacket pocket. One glance at the screen instantly darkened his expression. Ethan's stomach dropped. Damien answered immediately. What happened? The voice speaking through the phone sounded urgent enough that even Ethan could hear the panic. Damien's jaw tightened violently. Then he looked directly at Ethan. Someone accessed Noah's hospital records from inside Cross Biotech headquarters 30 minutes ago. Every bit of warmth vanished from the room instantly, because someone now knew Noah existed. Chapter 3. The Air War. Ethan had never seen hospital staff move that quickly before. Within 20 minutes of Damien's phone call, private security guards dressed in dark suits appeared across the entire pediatric floor. Nurses whispered nervously near reception desks, while additional security scanners were installed outside Noah's room. The atmosphere inside St. Gabriel Medical Center shifted from peaceful to tense almost instantly. Noah noticed it too. Why are there so many scary people outside? He asked quietly while clutching his stuffed fox against his chest. Ethan forced a small smile he did not feel. They are just being careful. But Damien did not even try to soften the truth anymore. Someone dangerous is looking for you, he said calmly. Ethan shot him an alarmed look immediately. Damien. He deserves honesty. Noah looked between them carefully. Because of me? Damien crossed the room and crouched beside the hospital bed until they were eye level. No, he answered firmly. Because some people are afraid of what you represent. Noah frowned softly. What do I represent? Damien's expression darkened. Family. Ethan looked away instantly because hearing Damien say that word hurt in ways he could not explain. For 6 years, Ethan convinced himself Noah only needed him. That surviving quietly was enough. But now Damien stood here looking at their son like the center of his entire world. And Ethan no longer knew how to protect either of them from what came next. Damien's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen before immediately stepping toward the hallway. Ethan followed him outside the room. "What is happening?" Damien lowered his voice. "Someone inside my company leaked Noah's identity to the Cross family board." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Your father knows." Damien's silence became confirmation enough. Ethan leaned heavily against the wall as panic clawed through his chest. "We need to leave." "No." Damien's answer came instantly. "Leaving is exactly what they expect you to do." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "Damien, your family threatened my unborn child once already." Damien stepped closer, his expression sharp with controlled fury. "And they will never get another chance." For a moment Ethan almost believed him completely. Then a loud commotion erupted near the elevator lobby. One of Damien's guards rushed forward immediately, while another pressed a hand against his earpiece. The entire hallway suddenly tensed. Damien moved instinctively in front of Ethan without hesitation. Pure alpha protection. "What happened?" Damien demanded sharply. "Unauthorized individuals entered the hospital parking structure." The guard answered quickly. "They left before identification." Ethan's knees nearly gave out. Damien noticed instantly, one hand steadying Ethan's arm before he could fall. "Look at me," Damien said firmly. Ethan forced himself to meet those steel-gray eyes. "I cannot lose you again." The raw honesty in Damien's voice shattered something deep inside Ethan. Before he could answer, Noah suddenly appeared at the partially open hospital doorway holding his stuffed fox tightly. His small face looked frightened now. "Daddy!" Ethan immediately rushed toward him. "What is wrong?" Noah looked up nervously. "There was a man outside my room." Every adult in the hallway froze instantly. Damien crouched beside Noah carefully. "What man?" Noah swallowed hard. "An old alpha." Ethan's entire body turned cold. Noah continued quietly. "He looked at me and said I have the cross eyes." Silence exploded across the hallway. Damien's expression became terrifyingly still. Because there was only one person in Seattle cruel enough to say something like that to a 6-year-old child. Damien's father had just found them. Damien moved Ethan and Noah out of St. Gabriel Medical Center less than an hour later. A private security convoy surrounded the underground parking structure, while rain poured across downtown Seattle in silver sheets. Noah sat quietly in the back seat of Damien's black sport utility vehicle with his stuffed fox held tightly against his chest. The child had barely spoken since seeing the older alpha outside his hospital room. Ethan stayed close beside him, one protective arm wrapped around Noah while anxiety twisted violently inside his stomach. Damien drove himself. His jaw remained tight the entire ride. "Your father should not know Noah exists already," Ethan whispered finally. Damien kept his eyes on the road. "He has people everywhere inside the company." Ethan looked out the rain-covered window, exhausted fear slowly settling into his bones again. For one brief moment inside that hospital room, he almost believed they could become something close to a family. But reality had arrived too quickly. Powerful alpha dynasties did not simply allow hidden heirs to appear without consequences. 20 minutes later, the vehicle entered a private underground garage beneath Cross Tower. Noah stared upward in amazement as the elevator carried them toward the penthouse level high above the city skyline. "This building is huge," he whispered softly. Damien looked at him through the reflection in the elevator doors. "You can explore it tomorrow if you want." Noah blinked. "Really? Really?" Ethan watched the interaction silently. Every second Damien spent near Noah only deepened the bond between them. That terrified Ethan more than he wanted to admit. The penthouse itself looked cold and impossibly expensive, all glass walls and dark marble floors overlooking Seattle's glowing skyline. Yet the moment Noah stepped inside, Damien's entire attention shifted toward, making the unfamiliar place feel safe for him. He ordered warm food from the kitchen staff. He found extra blankets when Noah admitted hospitals made sleeping difficult. He even turned on animated movies in the living room despite clearly never watching cartoons himself. Ethan noticed everything, and somehow that hurt even more than Damien being cruel would have. Hours later, Noah finally fell asleep on the massive sectional couch beneath several blankets. Ethan quietly adjusted the child's stuffed fox beside him before stepping toward the balcony for air. Cold night wind hit his face instantly. Damien followed moments later. Neither of them spoke at first. The city lights stretched endlessly below them like another universe entirely. "You still think leaving was the right choice?" Damien finally asked quietly. Ethan closed his eyes. "I kept him alive. And alone." Ethan flinched hard. Damien immediately looked regretful, but the damage was already done. Silence settled heavily between them again before Damien's phone suddenly rang. He answered immediately. Ethan watched his expression darken with every passing second. "When?" Damien demanded sharply. The voice on the other end answered quickly. Damien turned toward the penthouse windows overlooking the sleeping city below. "Lock down the building," he ordered coldly. Ethan's pulse spiked instantly. "What happened?" Damien ended the call slowly before looking directly at him. "The Cross family board just announced an emergency succession meeting." Ethan felt dread spread through his chest. "What does that mean?" Damien's gray eyes hardened dangerously. "It means they are preparing to challenge Noah's right to the Cross inheritance." Then his expression darkened even further. "And my father just arrived in Seattle." The emergency succession meeting took place less than 12 hours later inside the top-floor boardroom of Cross Biotech Industries. Rain battered the massive glass windows while Seattle disappeared beneath heavy gray clouds. Ethan stood near the elevator entrance holding Noah's hand tightly as Damien faced the long table filled with powerful alphas from the Cross family board. At the center sat Victor Cross. Older now, colder somehow. His sharp silver eyes landed on Noah immediately. The child instinctively moved closer to Ethan. Damien noticed at once. "You do not look at him like that," Damien said coldly. The room fell silent instantly. Victor folded his hands calmly on the polished table. "You brought an unregistered Omega child into a family succession matter." Noah lowered his head slightly at the words. Ethan felt anger rise immediately, but Damien spoke first. "You mean my son?" Victor's expression hardened. "That child represents instability." "No," Damien answered sharply. "He represents the future of this family." Several board members exchanged uneasy looks. Victor slowly stood from his chair. "You are willing to risk your inheritance over an Omega and a child hidden from this family for 6 years? Damien did not hesitate. "I would burn this entire company to the ground before abandoning them." Silence exploded across the boardroom. Ethan stared at Damien in shock. Even Victor looked caught off guard for the first time all morning. Noah tightened his grip around Ethan's hand. "Daddy?" he whispered softly. Ethan looked down immediately. Noah glanced nervously toward the angry adults across the room. "Are we in trouble?" Ethan knelt beside him carefully. "No, sweetheart." But before Ethan could say more, Damien crossed the room and crouched beside Noah too. "Listen to me," Damien said gently. "None of this is your fault." Noah studied him carefully with wide silver gray eyes. "Then why is everyone mad?" Damien looked directly at his father while answering. "Because some people only care about power." Victor's expression darkened instantly. "Enough." Damien slowly stood again. The entire room seemed to tense around him. 6 years ago, someone from this family threatened Ethan while he was carrying my child. Several board members visibly reacted with surprise. Victor remained silent. Damien's voice became colder with every word. "Investigators disappeared. Records were erased. My searches were sabotaged." He looked directly at his father now. "You stole 6 years from me." Victor finally spoke quietly. "I protected this family." "No," Damien answered. "You destroyed it." The silence afterward felt enormous. Then something unexpected happened. One of the oldest board members slowly stood from his chair. "The child has the cross eyes," the Alpha said quietly while looking toward Noah. "And Damien has already chosen his heir." Another board member nodded reluctantly. Then another. Victor realized too late that the room had shifted against him. Damien walked toward Ethan and Noah without taking his eyes off the board. "Effective immediately," he said firmly. "Noah Hale Cross is recognized publicly as my son and legal heir." Ethan felt tears hit his eyes instantly. Noah looked confused for half a second before Damien suddenly lifted him gently into his arms. The child laughed softly in surprise while instinctively wrapping his arms around Damien's neck. And just like that, the entire war ended. 6 months later, the penthouse no longer felt cold. Noah's drawings covered the kitchen refrigerator. Ethan had opened a small pediatric clinic funded quietly by Damien. Every morning before school, Noah raced through the apartment while Damien pretended to lose arguments about superhero backpacks and blueberry waffles. Some nights Ethan still woke from old fears, but Damien always reached for him first, always stayed. One rainy evening, Ethan stood near the balcony, watching Noah laugh in the living room, while Damien helped build a complicated toy spaceship on the floor beside him. For the first time in years, peace no longer felt temporary. Ethan smiled softly as Damien looked up toward him across the room. Because 6 years ago, Ethan had hidden their son from the world to keep him safe. But in the end, Noah became the reason they finally found their way home to each other.